Hello and welcome to Between Two COOs, where phenomenal chief operating officers come to share their knowledge, advice, and crazy stories. I'm your host, Michael Koenig, and this is part one of a special two-part episode featuring our guest, Doug Hanna, Chief Operating Officer at Grafana Labs, the company behind the leading open source projects in the observability space, Grafana and Loki. Grafana Labs recently added to their war chest with a $220 million fundraise at a $3 billion valuation. So, why a two-parter? Doug is leading Grafana Labs through explosive growth, both in headcount on the team and customers and revenue. In this episode, we focus on the former. What goes into scaling an organization from 70 employees to over 500 over the course of just 18 months? Part 2 focuses on the commercial side of scaling their go-to-market for their enterprise SaaS. Prior to joining Grafana Labs, Doug spent 4 years at Zendesk as their VP of Operations, and before that, as the founder and CEO of Help.com. Welcome, Doug. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, tell me about your path. How'd you end up as COO? Everyone's got a different one.
Yeah, and I think mine is probably non-traditional in a group of people with non-traditional paths. So I started my early career doing technical support, and that's actually how we met a long time ago when I was at Automatic. And I spent most of my early career in the web hosting industry and kind of companies around it, doing like technical support leadership and then some consulting, and eventually kind of worked my way up through a couple of companies and started running one. So I ran this company called The Small Orange for about 4 years, and we sold it to a private equity-backed conglomerate called Endurance International Group. They went public while I was there, and I stayed kind of for my 2 years for the earnout and being part of a bigger company as a kind of basically a GM of the company that I sold to them. And then started a new company called Help.com, the same investor that I did with my web hosting company. We did that for kind of 18 months or so, and then realized wasn't quite the right team fit, space, time, like all those things that can lead to a company, early stage company, not quite working out, but built a really great team there. And actually one of the people that I worked with is the person who eventually introduced me to Grafana Labs. So I'll get to that in a second. After Help.com, the startup, I went to Zendesk for about 4 years, and I led the platform there for about half my time. And then the other half of my time, I got probably my best exposure to the COO role when I worked for the Zendesk COO at the time, this guy named Tom Kaiser, who's since gone on to be the CEO of a company called Hootsuite. And that's kind of Tom's right-hand person running kind of BizOps and strategy and special projects and operational cadence and rhythm and things like that, while Zendesk went on this journey basically from like 1,000 to 4,000 employees, and I think about 150 to just under $1 billion in revenue in several years. So that was a great experience. After being at kind of an increasingly large company for 4 years, it's like I was thinking about a change. So I got connected through one of my former Help.com colleagues at Grafana, and had a bunch of conversations with them, and that was a little over 2 years ago now.
What was it that drew you to Grafana after spending so much time at Zendesk?
Yeah, like candidly, I was not familiar with Grafana before my former colleague and friend went to go work there. I hadn't even heard of it, which was shame on me because it was actually super popular, and I clearly was just not spending time around the right people. Because when I started talking to the company and then talking to engineers that I knew and SREs and people like that, they're like, oh yeah, I use Grafana all the time. I get a lot of value from it, which was super encouraging. But I think what drew me to Grafana was like when evaluating a company, you think about like, I've heard it described as tech, TAM, and team. So the tech for Grafana, the product itself, widely loved, widely adopted, growing really fast, popular in all kinds of organizations. One of the things that really initially interested me was Graham, who's in our sales organization. He's telling me about all these big deals the company was closing with really like large marquee customers. I'm like, wow, for at the time a 30 or 40 person company to do big deals with like Fortune 50 companies, and like they must be onto something. And then TAM, the observability space, is enormous. Pretty much every company that has any sort of infrastructure needs observability, and all the like kind of tailwinds of cloud, containerization, et cetera, like all of those are favorable to what we're trying to do at Grafana and have been really beneficial to us for the last couple of years, and hopefully will be for some time. And then the team, I really enjoyed spending time with Raj, our CEO and co-founder, his other two co-founders, Anthony and Torkel, some of the go-to-market people that had been in place at the early days of the company. And I was like, I think this is a group of people I could work with. So it kind of checked all the boxes, along with this like, hey, I think being a part of a 4,000 person company is less exciting to me than being kind of a bigger part of, at the time, a 70 person company.
Sure, that makes sense. Tech, TAM, and team.
Yeah, and
So
there's like 3 or 4 variations of basically the same thing, but I heard someone describe it that way and it just stuck with me, and I've thought about it that way ever
it's
since.
good. T cubed. And it's also worth noting you're back in open source. So coming full circle back to your days at Automatic with WordPress and now with Grafana. What's drawing you back to open source? And is it what's your passion around it?
Yeah, I think open source is an interesting way to go to market. It has its pros and cons. Like, people that work with me will know that I'm like relentless about describing pros and cons of things. And open source is not all pros and it's not all cons. But I especially think for software adopted by developers, like definitely true of Grafana, probably previously more true for WordPress than it is now, as it's gotten so mainstream. Like, open source is a great way to get kind of community, like popular community growth, kind of mind share, all these different things, and then to build a business on top of that. Because really our business model at Grafana Labs is like, take this huge community of about 750,000 active instances of Grafana and monetize like a low single digit percentage of those customers, and build hopefully a very large sustainable company on top of that. And MongoDB, Elastic, they've kind of done a similar approach to us. Automatic has kind of more moved into like managed services, is my understanding of kind of their current business model, but where they're really about hosting it and providing the value add on top of that, versus an open core model, which is like what Mongo or us do.
And so the COO role isn't one size fits all.
Yeah.
Describe some of the areas you filled as VP of operations in Zendesk. What areas of responsibility do you have in Grafana now?
Yeah, so I basically run all of our revenue teams. So that's sales, marketing, our post-sales teams like customer success and support and professional services, and recently customer education, solutions engineering, and then our different ops functions as well. So we have like a revenue operations team. I took over IT, all of our rhythm of business, kind of biz ops sort of things as well, special projects. So it's kind of revenue plus some ops things, kind of not in my scope. There's product engineering. Our CEO is super involved on that side. And then we have senior leaders for G&A functions like finance and HR.
That's very interesting because usually you have the G&A situated under a COO, and sometimes you tack on, in addition to that, the go-to-market functions. How is that separated differently at Grafana? And it almost sounds like you are a chief revenue officer.
Yeah, my role practically is more similar to a CRO plus some other operational functions. I think, though, what distinguishes me from a pure CRO, besides background, like I'm not a career sales leader by any means, is that I do have some of these other operational pieces that I'm responsible for. And like, I think a lot about kind of how our company works holistically, what our goals are, how we communicate those, how we operate as a business and a team. That's definitely a part of the role, and I try to think about it beyond just the go-to-market teams. But I spend a lot of my time, and my team spends a lot of their time talking about revenue, helping customers, helping kind of grow our customers as well. So that is that is the bulk of the role and the bulk of where I spend my time. And I think, to your point, like every COO role is different. I've met a lot of COOs with scope kind of similar to mine, and then I've met some that are more like G&A focused. It really depends on the company.
So at Zendesk, did you have exposure to sales, or was this really the first time that you hopped in to leading a sales function?
Yeah, so at Zendesk, my boss Tom had basically the same scope that I have at Grafana. So all the revenue teams reported into him for most of his tenure there, and that was super helpful. So my team worked with sales, with marketing, with our other kind of revenue teams at Zendesk. Sales strategy and analytics reported into my team. So I spent a lot of time with that organization, the leaders in it, but it's very different to be like a supporting function to sales versus like owning the number and being involved in deals and some of those things. So it's definitely, it was a new experience for me. And now I guess I'm about to wrap up my 8th quarter at Grafana, and it's never a dull day.
It rarely is. And I suppose you, like every other COO out there, has those moments where you have a new problem and you think, well, never thought I'd see that. Do you have one that comes to mind that you can share with us?
Yeah, there's definitely like plenty of challenges associated with scale and with growing. But honestly, like when I have the like never thought I'd see that, I'll turn around a little bit and make it kind of an optimistic note of like if you had told me a little over 2 years ago, I guess 2.5 years ago now, probably I started talking to the Grafana team. It took me a little while to get over the line. They were very patient with me. But if you had told me, oh, fast forward 24 months or 30 months and your company will have 500 people, the go-to-market team will be whatever, 200 something people, you'll have raised $350 million and like be on this like really incredible path, I would have been like, there's no way. Like that would just be like exceeds all expectations. And that's really, really exciting. It's really humbling to be part of that. But I think it's like, oh my God, I would not necessarily have expected that. And I was definitely taking a chance on a space I didn't really know much about and in a product area that I knew I had to learn a lot about. And it was super overwhelming, especially initially. Now I can at least like pretend that I know a little bit about observability. But 2 years ago, I was like, I didn't know what Prometheus was barely. And now I have to talk about it all day long.
So 24 months, crazy growth. What are some of the challenges that you face, particularly as a leader, when you're raising all this money and the team is growing so quickly? How do you manage those transitions? And what are some of the tricks of the trade that you found really help you?
Yeah, I think I try to spend most of my time and mental energy and emotional energy focused on the things that are kind of within my scope of control and my span of control. So really thinking about like how do we make great hiring decisions? Like overall, that's probably the most challenging thing is like we've added over 400 people to the company on a net basis since I started. And making sure all those are good and their culture accretive and business value accretive and all these other things versus dilutive is like so important and has such a big impact. So I've built up most of my team. A lot of those people did not exist or weren't at the company before I started, and they're running new functions that we're really building out. So I've spent so much time there, and I think for any new leader, like taking stock of your team, understanding kind of where the people are today and where they need to be 12 months from now, 24 months from now, 36 months from now, and then in the context of so much growth and change, like also setting expectations of like, hey, you're gonna have to do A, B, or C to like kind of scale with this business and at the pace that we're scaling. Or we might need to bring in additional leadership. And that's not a bad thing for anybody. It's just part of a quickly growing company and how that happens. So I've had a lot of conversations like that with a number of people on my team, and just being sensitive to like, hey, it's a new company basically every 6 months. And with that comes new people that we need to bring in, new experience sets we need, new skill sets we need.
It's rather remarkable. 400 people net in the 24 months that you've been there. You essentially went from a company where pretty much everyone knew everyone, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I had this moment a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh, I used to meet like all of our new engineering leaders when they started. And I was like, oh, like I would introduce myself and be like, hey, I'm Doug, I do these things. And now like I don't even know who their bosses are in a lot of cases, just because we've grown so much. And it's not because I'm totally disconnected from that organization. It's just there's so many new people and I haven't really had a chance to interact with them as much as I'd like. And like apply all this to like global pandemic and people not being able to meet each other in person and things like that, it kind of just amplifies it.
That's really interesting. So let's talk about the people not being able to meet each other. And you and I both had a lot of experience working in distributed companies. For a lot of people, though, this is new, uncharted territory. And how are you creating a sense of community within your teams for people who have never met before?
Totally. So one thing we're trying to do now is we are starting to get together. So if you're vaccinated and you're comfortable traveling, like we're supporting that, and we're enabling that. And we plan to, knock on wood, in May of next year, 2022, I guess, we're going to bring everybody at the company together in Whistler in Canada for basically a week. And we're going to call it Grafana Fest and just like let everybody get to know each other and build some bonds. But like my team has started getting together. My direct team has gotten together twice now, kind of last 6 months, and really investing in that and leaving space in the agenda for just getting to know each other as people has been valuable. And then I think getting together, in between getting together, just kind of reminding people of like, there's probably some additional tension and other things that wouldn't be as true or maybe there's less empathy than would be the case if people had met each other in person. So we have those conversations every now and then. It's like someone will be saying, "Oh, I'm frustrated with this person or this team or whatever," but it's like I need to step back and remind myself I haven't met them in person. I'm sure it would be better if we were getting together in that way. So it's, I think, reminding yourself about it, obviously being intentional about like time zone friendliness and meeting schedules and doing things asynchronously. Like there's kind of some brass tacks of like working in a distributed environment that we try to keep in mind. But I think assuming, not just assuming, but knowing that it's a real life person on the other side of that Zoom box or Slack message, and it's not just like someone waking up to make your life difficult, is so important, and builds so much empathy. And it's just so much more, it's so much better if you've had a chance to actually get to know that person in person, is what we're finding.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting within open source how you find companies that are rooted in open source are really great at asynchronous communication. And that being because that's how open source projects get done.
Yeah.
So on the engineering front, there's certainly a more natural comfort with asynchronous communication. How do you help folks, not on the engineering teams, get used to asynchronous? Because it's not something that people are necessarily used to doing outside of just emailing and responding when you can.
Yeah. Some of it is like figuring out the right cadences to talk live. Like I'm actually kind of a broken record at work where I see like a 40 message Slack thread. I'm like, can you all just get on a call? Like it will be easier to like talk about it live instead of going back and forth over this over like 2 or 3 days. And that's actually super productive. But I think what we do is we do try to have a culture of writing things down, having transparent notes. Like for pretty much all of our customers, we have a Slack channel like with the customer name. And like if I want to see what's going on with customer A, I go into that Slack channel and like I can ask questions of the account team, or just scroll back up and see what's been happening. So doing things like that just make it easy for where even if you miss the meeting or you're not there for it or there is no meeting, like you can know what's happening. We try to implement a couple processes like that, but ultimately I still think we are like trying to get people talking to each other live, making sure people have local management and kind of a friendly time zone as possible, and that they're able to have these kind of connections with other people.
So nothing really is replacing the power of live in that case then for creating those connections.
I don't think so. I think like at least for me and the people I work with, we really benefit from talking live and spending our time in conversations like these, where you're chatting with somebody and hopefully you can see them as well. Like async is great. I love asynchronous stuff. We trade a lot of docs back and forth. There's a lot of kind of debate and discussion in docs and Slack and stuff like that. But I couldn't imagine being at like a purely async, everything's written out sort of memos. We're not quite as like post geographic in that sense of where we can just totally do all of it asynchronously. We haven't figured that out yet.
It's not without challenge. GitLab seems to have done a pretty good job. I mean, they pretty much default to async and then have a similar sort of escalation pattern to synchronous communication that you described as well. But definitely agree with you that there's something to be said for just hopping on a call, seeing someone's face and understanding and hearing the intonation, right? Versus just reading text chat, which can, the meaning and intention behind it can really get lost. So in terms of some of the advice that you got along your path, we've all been fortunate to have those opportunities where we have someone like you had at Zendesk who can kind of advise us. What's a great piece of advice that you received that's helped you along your path and that you still kind of use today?
Yeah, I think some good advice for COOs in particular is my previous boss at Zendesk, actually, when I was getting this job, he's like, you're gonna have to deal with a lot of stuff you just don't want to deal with, but it's like your responsibility to deal with it. And I felt like maybe in previous roles I was able to be a little bit more choosy and be like, I don't really want to mess with that, or that seems messy, I don't want to deal with it. Whereas that's not the case now. Like it needs to get done. It doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable or whatever. So that's been a good one. I've personally invested a lot of time in like how am I helping like support people as people? How am I helping like empathize with them, help them manage kind of personal conflicts on their team and that they might have with peers and things like that. Like that's an area that I've tried to lean in more. I'm naturally very like analytic operational person. So like the people side is one where I'm like, okay, I'm having to invest more time and energy in it so I can really help support people there, because it's so critical. And like at any sort of scale, like these jobs are really just people leadership and management and drama sorting problem or jobs. And like that's what the job is. And like to do it well, you need to be really good at that side too.
There you have it. So everyone, thank you so much for listening. Doug, thanks for coming on the podcast. Where can people go to keep up with you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, not very actively, but I'm there. Douglas Hanna. Grafana is pretty active on Twitter, and you can check out our website. It's just at Grafana or grafana.com. And yeah, I'd be happy to connect with other COOs that are kind of in a similar spot, trying to grow companies, trying to grow teams. I've really enjoyed those conversations, and I've met other people, and appreciative of people that are a couple steps ahead of me and making the time. And it's really nice to see a community that's so open to that. So also thanks for doing this, Michael, and giving people an opportunity to learn from others.
My pleasure, Doug. There you have it. Thanks for listening to Between Two COOs. I'm your host, Michael Koenig, and a very special thank you to our guest, Doug Hanna, for joining us. Tune in next time for our next COO chat on Between Two COOs, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Just visit between2coos.com for more. And if you have a minute, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and tell others about the show so they can get great advice from phenomenal COOs. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Tune in next time, and until then, so long.